Good evening, everyone. My name is Timothy Adeli. Thanks to everyone for attending another IIBA Tool and Technique Thursday. Your presence is much appreciated. The microclass for today is brought to you by the IIBA Durban chapter, and we'll be considering a topic titled Reimagining Software Implementation in a Digital World. Our presenter for tonight is Oge Onwachukwu. However, before I go into details about our brilliant presenter for tonight, I will quickly go over some house rules. Please stay on mute unless cleared to talk. Switch off your video, only the presenter's video is allowed. The presentation will be 45 minutes long. You may post your questions in the main chat, and we will read them to the presenter when it's time for questions and answers. Presentations will be uploaded on the IIBA YouTube page, as you can see up here. Unfortunately, we will not be sending out the presentation deck. If you would also like to present a tool or technique to the community, please contact us via the email that is being displayed here. And to become a member of the IIBA South Africa chapter, you can visit the website here. Benefits of IIBA members: will have access to our online library featuring over 11,000 titles, access to member exclusive webinars, access to PDF publications, articles, industry papers, and reports, opportunities to connect with other members at local or international conferences and chapter events, exclusive access to global community of BAs, educators, thought leaders, mentors, and coaches, saving of up to 40% on global recognized professional certifications, and discounts on conferences. And back to our presenter. Oge is a business transformation enthusiast and has served as project manager, business analyst, and organizational change manager on diverse transformation projects across multiple industry domains for over 13 years. She graduated with first-class honors in applied accounting and has also earned several professional certifications along the way, which include CBAP, PMP, PROSCI, CPOA, ACCA, and CPA. Oge enjoys sharing a wealth of knowledge through writing, speaking, mentoring, and coaching. Oge is currently a business analyst and a project manager at Nova Scotia Community College, where she collaborates with business team to deploy and deliver valuable solutions. She also serves as the current director of events for the IIBA Halifax chapter. She is the contributing editor for the Star Woman Quarterly magazine and is the co-founder of Franoft Consulting, a business and technology consulting firm specializing in supporting small and medium-sized organizations to achieve their process improvement and technology enablement goals. Franoft Consulting is also an IIBA-endorsed education provider, equipping professionals to start and grow their careers in business analysis, project management, and organizational change management. They serve individuals as well as corporate organizations. I can go on about the presentation summary, but I will allow Oge to, dazzle you with that topic, reimagining software implementation in a digital world. Oge, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Oge.
Okay. Let me try to share my screen. Point of correction, Tim, I'm not here to bedazzle people. I'm here to learn as well. I'm here to share what I've learned and to elicit feedback from people and also learn from their experiences. Kindly bear with me as I try to share my screen here. I think I'm sharing the wrong screen. Stop. Okay, let me do this again. Tim, please confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone once again. So today, like I said, I'm here to share and learn. As we know, the world, as we all know, it has changed dramatically in the last 2 years, courtesy of COVID-19. We have seen things we previously thought were impossible become possible, like astronomically. We've had to change the way we work, the way we interact, the way we celebrate. We've had parties, lots of parties on Zoom and all of that, and Teams and other collaboration platforms. The business world too has not been left out all of this. The business environment has become VUCA, V-U-C-A, like, which means it has become more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, more ambiguous. And I thought of, so when I was reached out to present for the IIBA South Africa, I thought of what could I talk that aligns with their theme? Because I know I learned your theme is thrive. What should business analysts to be looking out for? What's in the future? What's the future for business analysts? And the truth is that the software implementation or software deployment landscape has changed even more drastically in recent times. So if we want to be on top of our games as business analysts, we need to talk about this. We need to learn from people that have done it before and see how we can begin to rethink our approaches. So I would say basically as BAs, we need to reimagine our approach because the world has changed, the world has become more digital. Things we used to do traditionally will not work. Those tool sets we used to use in the past that served us, unfortunately, cannot serve us in today's world. So we need to do some bit of unlearning, relearn, and continue to learn. Most importantly, we need to be very flexible and willing to adapt to changes. We need to be lifelong learners because the change would only continue. We don't know what to expect tomorrow. My objective in today's session is more of learning. Like I would keep saying this. I'm not here to present. I'm not here to teach. I'm here for us to rub minds together, exchange insights, exchange ideas, because we're all experiencing this change together. I've not gone ahead of anyone. We're all in the same world, experiencing these changes, adapting as we move on. So I'll start this session today with, let's start with some facts, some research data and predictions from Gartner. And if you don't know, for some of us that may not know or may not have heard of Gartner, I don't want to assume everybody knows Gartner. Gartner is a research organization. They do lots of research. They're also into advisory consulting, bringing data, looking at prediction, looking at what's happening in the technology landscape across industries, and kind of providing advisory and consulting services via those research they conduct. Part of my work, I've used Gartner a lot, and if you also use Forrester reports, they are also all in the same industry. Gartner predicts that by 2025, 55% of large enterprises will successfully implement an all-in-cloud SaaS, which I call SaaS strategy. And I'll go through about 4 quotes. I want you to think about this and what it means for you and for your organization. So by 2025, 55% of large organizations, which is just about 3 years away or less, would have an all-in-cloud SaaS strategy. Another prediction says by same 2025, a majority of the top 20 software vendors will phase out the sale of new perpetual licenses. And what does this mean? So currently, most software model is there's this perpetual license. You deploy the solution on-prem, and then you pay, and there are some license costs and all of that. So By 2020, Gartner is saying this will be phased out totally, top 20 software vendors. And if you look at the top 20 vendors, unfortunately, I don't have the list here. They kind of service, like say about 60 to 70% of enterprises across the world. So another prediction here is as not a prediction, more like a fact. As a service or subscription-based software have become the key drivers of global software licensing economy over the last decade. Big names like Salesforce, Workday, ServiceNow have only been SaaS solutions. They've not had traditional or on-prem version. They've only come into the market as SaaS. And most organizations today are either using Salesforce, Workday, or ServiceNow. So the last one, large traditional software vendors like Microsoft, SAP, IBM, and the likes are moving to SaaS more and more for their new product offering. It is only a matter of time, and these vendors will stop offering traditional perpetual licenses altogether. So what this tells me, and I would also want to see what you think about all these predictions from Gartner. What do you think? How does it impact your work? How does it impact your approach to software implementation? You can type in your comments in the chat, please. I really want this to be more very, very interactive. Okay, while I wait for you to provide me some response, for me, I believe what this tells me is that a lot of us here, or I want to assume, most of us here would have been part of, or we would have been part of or supported a SaaS implementation already. Can you explain to us what SaaS is all about? Yes, Lisbeth, we'll get there. Please, yeah, I have a section that describes SaaS cloud computing. But like I mentioned, SaaS is software as a service. Any application you kind of that is web-based, you kind of go on to your, you don't need to deploy to your, you don't need to download or install on your computer. You just go online, log in. You have to access it via a web browser. Software as a service. Oh yes, thank you. Software as a service. Okay, yeah, we'll get there. So for me, I believe if you have not yet been part of a software as a service implementation, or either as a BA supporting in one way or the other, maybe a project manager, a change manager, or even an end user, it's only a matter of time you would be part of this very soon, from all the predictions we are seeing, and also from what I've experienced in recent times as part of my work. It could be as wide as, and it could be enterprise-wide, like implementing an ERP. It could also be line of business, say maybe HR, we're just implementing a software as a service tool for HR or for the finance team or for, say, health and safety, depending. Now, let's start the presentation proper. So today, we'll be talking about cloud computing, not in detail, just to lay some foundation for what we'll be talking down the line. Cloud computing and SaaS. So cloud computing encompasses so many other things, but the focus will be on SaaS, which is software as a service. We'll also be looking at the traditional implementation versus the SaaS implementation. We'll also look at what is the typical SaaS implementation approach. Since we need to reimagine, we need to rethink the way we implement software today. And what are the best practices and recommendations? And this is part from my experience and from a little research I've done. And I also want to learn from people that have experienced or that have supported software as a service deployment. I'm open to learning from you also today. I see Zamani says, how does a business analyst upskill their software knowledge to stay relevant in the job market? Okay, we can get to that at the end of the class. So let's start and let's look at some definitions very quickly. Cloud computing, let's start with that. So cloud computing is any technology services that is delivered over the internet. It could be data storage, it could be servers, it could be a database, it could be a networking tool, it could also be a software. There are three broad categorizations when you begin to talk about cloud computing. So you have infrastructure as a service. When you begin to talk about infrastructure as a service, it's more like you have a vendor that is providing you with hardware, and what you just need to do is to consume the resources you need. The vendor is responsible for providing you the servers, the data center. You don't have to have data center in-house. They provide you with all the infrastructure you need for maybe your applications you want to run in-house. So you only consume what you need. You only subscribe for what you need. And popular vendors we have operating in that space is you have the Amazon Web Services, you have the Microsoft Azure, you have Google Compute Engine. We have other vendors in that space, but I just want to restrict it to what I think is very common and people can easily relate with. The next category is platform as a service. For platform as platform is more like an extra, this is just like, would I say an extra layer on top of the infrastructure. So typically they would provide, the platform is provided for developers majorly, and they are able to develop their applications on the platform. They are not responsible. They don't need to worry themselves about the infrastructure and all of that. So the developers just consume what they need, the infrastructure, they pay for what they need and just install their applications, develop the application. The most common one and the one, examples of platform as a service, you also have Amazon playing in that space with AWS Elastic Beanstalk. You have the Windows Azure. Also, you have the Google App Engine. So the last category, which will be our major focus this evening, is the software as a service. So for software as a service, every functionality is delivered completely. The users don't need to worry about the infrastructure. They don't need to worry about application. They don't need to worry about servers, operating system. The vendor is totally responsible for managing all of that. What the user just does is to go log in and use the application. So you have a working application you can access over the internet. The vendor is responsible for managing it end to end. Examples we have in that space, we have the very popular Microsoft 365, even your Gmail, your Google apps, they are all software as a service. You have Salesforce. Salesforce is a very big organization, more into CRM space. I heard, and of course, they've also they're expanding into other areas. You also have ServiceNow. These people have established themselves in the software as a service space, and this is our area of focus this evening. There are other, in fact, there's what Gartner calls anything as a service. So we are seeing more things like case management as a service, identity as a service, business process as a service, and these are just variants of software as a service. Basically, anything you can access online that is majorly vendor managed. So let's quickly look at, Elizabeth, I hope this is kind of providing some context to you. Let's talk about software as a service, SaaS, which is popularly called SaaS. I call it SaaS, and most people I interact with also call it that. It's also known as commercial off-the-shelf package solutions, commercial off-the-shelf tool. And Gartner describes it using 3 key elements. So any service, okay, my mouse is failing me here. Okay, yeah. So any service that is vendor hosted and managed falls under that bucket. And if it's one to many, multi-tenancy. And what you mean by one-to-many? They deploy it at just one instance and it serves a whole lot of other clients. So you could have thousands, millions of clients subscribing to the same instance. Of course, they kind of compartmentalize their database and storage. It doesn't come together, but they are usually one-to-many deployment. You also have, so you could also have a private deployment, private cloud. You could have public cloud, but most times SaaS are usually public cloud deployment, which means you have multiple people on one instance. And the last categorization is subscription-based, so it's pay as you go. That's the consideration. So why, looking at the data, the trends from the trends I shared initially, the research and fact I shared, why are organizations moving towards the SaaS? Why are they buying packaged applications? Why are they moving towards commercial off-the-shelf tools? Let's look at some of the benefits to understand why this is happening. So first is that you can instantly access new capabilities and dramatically improve your processes within an organization with a SaaS application. It is very easy to deploy. In fact, most times, when you look at some implementation approaches from vendors, they will tell you it takes about 3 to 6 months, all things being equal, to deploy a SaaS application, which is very different from your traditional software application. Speed to market, an organization that is trying to go to the market very quickly, maybe a startup that is trying to get into the business space, don't have the time to go buy an on-prem solution and begin to customize to suit their needs. And they can leverage leading practices that have been built into the SaaS solution to quickly go to market. Technical infrastructure, you don't have to worry about technical infrastructure and installation. If you have done a traditional or on-prem implementation, you realize that this is a major part of the project, because first of all, there's the sizing that needs to be done to understand the capacity of the server that would support the load of the organization. They need to come do some installation. Sometimes you wouldn't even have the resources in-house. This needs to be outsourced. It's expensive and time-consuming. You don't have to worry about all, organizations don't have to worry about all this with a SaaS deployment. You also have quicker and faster upgrades, automatic upgrades actually, but sometimes it comes with an option for you to accept it or for you to take your time to understand what those changes are before you accept and deploy to production. I have a very classic example. So I work in a community college, and we recently concluded the upgrade of our student information system. This project took almost 18 months. That is how long an on-prem, the upgrade of an on-prem solution can take. And there was a lot of project management, like it was almost like a new implementation, because there were a lot of changes, lots of change management that needed to happen. So, but with the SaaS application, upgrades are faster, and you don't have to delay enjoying new features of your tool. You can get them as quick as possible. Low cost of entry, because it's pay as you go, is very easy for any organizations to buy those tools and begin to enjoy those benefits. It's also accessible and scalable. So today, you are a 50-man organization. You just pay and subscribe as you go for the numbers you know. And then 2-3 years down the line, you expand, you become 1,000, you can scale up, you can scale down, depending on what you need. Unlike the on-prem, once you do the sizing, you are fixed to your server size and all of that. Yeah, please post your questions, post your comments. If you have, what benefits have you seen? If you are using a SaaS application today, what benefits have you seen your organization enjoy from deploying a SaaS application? I'd really love to know. So let's quickly look at the traditional software implementation. Before I continue, I want to know, with a show of hands, I think I can see hands here. What about customization in the SaaS world? Okay, we'll talk about that down the line. how many people so far, now we understand what SaaS is all about. So how many of us have experienced a SaaS implementation already? Maybe you've been part of it, part of the project, or you've been an end user. How many of us here on this call today have experienced SaaS implementation? Oh, good. I still see more hands coming up. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Elizabeth, yeah, Salesforce. Okay, good. Now, let's to quickly look at traditional software implementation, and then we compare it to the SaaS implementation, and let's see what are the changes that we need to, what are the things we need to rethink, what are the things we need to reimagine as we plan to support our organizations more benefit from their investment in these tools. So typically for your traditional software, you plan like every other project, you spend quite a lot of time doing your requirement analysis, architecture, design, development. Like you see these three: analysis, design, and development. You spend a whole lot of time in that space with an on-prem solution, with your traditional on-prem solution. However, with of course, you then move to testing and maintenance, and maintenance you deploy to production. So I have a question. In your experience working, for those that have, so I've only asked for those that have experienced Salesforce. I want to believe we have veteran BAs on the call today, or people that have been involved one way or the other deploying software. Where have you spent the most time during a traditional software implementation? Where have you spent the most time of your work, and what have you really done in that area? For me, I would say writing, understanding the business processes. Thank you, thank you, Catelo. For me, it's more like understanding the processes, documenting the processes to understand that, redesigning those processes, because of course we've learned that you need to optimize your processes before you automate them. And then writing requirement, tons and tons and tons of requirements. Thank you. I see analysis requirements in an agile environment. Yes, I see that. Zamani, thank you. Okay, I'll move on very quickly. Now, so for a traditional software implementation, I would liken it to building a house, because you need to take lots of measurements, you need to understand a whole lot of things. You need to build from the scratch. You need to install your hardware, your infrastructure before you do sizing of your hardware to make sure it's going to accommodate the solution that you'll be deploying for your organization. Sometimes the BA is not involved in that, but I've been part of that work, not doing the sizing. We get the vendor to do the sizing, and then we get our technical team to also work with them and make sure we have the server we need for that installation. And then we write lots of requirements. Before the requirement, understand the business processes, try to optimize them. What are the pain points? What are the things the business want to see? We are measuring, we are cutting, we are customizing, trying to make sure we get everything the way we want it. We're just looking inwards. Yeah, we might do a lot of looking outside, benchmarking to optimize our processes, but most times we are only asking the customers, what do you want? How do you want it done? And unfortunately, most times our stakeholders just want what is convenient for them. There's no much thinking. They just want it the way they know it, the way they've always known it. Nobody's rethinking much. Nobody's reimagining so much. So we do lots of measuring and building from the scratch. However, for a software implementation project, it's very different. It's more like you have a luxury apartment, you just pack your bags and move into that luxury apartment. And if anybody has experienced moving lately, or maybe moving to a service apartment or to something smaller than you are used to, not necessarily smaller than you are used, something that has been custom built kind of, you realize that sometimes you need to do away with some of your belongings. Probably you are moving to a service department, you have a deep freezer that is, say, 60 cubic, but it can't fit into the service department. You have to look for something smaller, right? So I hope I'm painting the picture well. For your traditional software, you have all the luxury, you have lots of time to build the way you want it. However, for the SaaS implementation, the building has been done for us already. Vendors have taken time to investigate, to optimize processes, to reimagine business models, to they've done lots of research to build into the software application leading practices. So they've done some of the thinking ahead for the stakeholders. They don't want you to worry yourself so much, right? So just come in as you are, as much as possible. There's still room for customization, but almost minimal customization. And when I say customization, it could be around branding. You want the software to look like your organization's, you want it to meet with the guidelines, the branding guidelines of your organization. You want your report to have some logos and all of that. Those kind of customizations are allowed. They are very much allowed. So for us to be able to support our organizations in implementing SaaS tools, we can't be all focused around gathering, documenting requirements. We can't continue, we can't just have that mindset of going to gather requirements, create a spec document for our project. We have to change it. We have to begin to question things. We have to focus on business value. When we go to stakeholders, they tell us this is how we want it. We should be curious to understand why they really want it. We should apply, I would say, the user story formula. Why do they want that thing? As a user, you want something. Please, why do you want this? The reason they want it, the value they will get from wanting that functionality, does it align with the business value? Does it align with the business outcome, the global business outcome? We begin to ask those kind of questions. It's not all about going to gather requirements. And I will tell you a story at this point. So I have a friend, we were just chatting about about this, and this was over a year ago. We're chatting about it, and I asked her, so what has changed? And she told me clearly, you know, that she went into that SaaS, that was her first SaaS project. She went into it with that mindset of, oh, we need to document our processes, we need to optimize our processes, and then write a laundry list of requirements before we go into implementation. And that took her up to 8 to 12 months. So the project was kind of delayed because she needed to go write requirements. And she didn't even know the tool the organization was going to end up buying, because the organization was going to go into the market to select the tool first. But she had done a lot of work of writing requirements. At the end of the day, the 12 months was just a waste of time. Have we really added value to the organization with that approach? No, we have failed because we have wasted, or unfortunately, and of course, this is not blaming her, it's part of learning. We fail, we learn. So time and money has been wasted. There was this loads of documentation that wasn't necessary, right? That has already been paid for by the organization. So there needs to be a rethink. And I have another picture here that paints, that perfectly tells, you know, that helps us reimagine or shifts our focus more like. So when typically on-prem, the first part of this diagram shows the on-prem installation or the on-prem implementation. The focus, 75% of the time you are focusing on the solution development, which is similar to those 3 gears I referred to when we looked at the traditional implementation approach, where you have your analysis, where you have your architecture built and design. That is typically the focus of an on-prem installation. However, when you move to cloud, the focus changes. Yeah, you will do your business process reengineering. Change management is very important. And we'll talk about that more quickly as we go down. But now, technical setup, data gathering and integration is just 25% because the solution has been built, it has been developed. Just pack your bag and move into the new apartments. That is what you are asked to do. So as BAs, how do we help our organization? How do we begin to educate our stakeholders First, we need to educate ourselves, change our mindset, learn new things, and then we are equipped to go begin to educate our stakeholders, organizations on the business model around SaaS and all of that. So I will quickly jump into the SaaS implementation approach. And this is based on my experience. Please feel free to share with me your experiences, your approach, what you typically do every step of the way. So the first step is to validate and define business need, which is usually where we start out from as business analysis professional. It has not changed. You need to confirm, validate the ideas. You need to, if possible, maybe do a business case. You want to make sure the organization is spending money where it matters. You come up with your high-level needs and requirements, very high level, nothing detailed at this point, because you really don't know the tool you are going to be buying. Tim, I would love you to help me keep track of these questions so that I'll take care of them at the end of the presentation. You also want to do benchmarking, jurisdictional scan. You want to know what other people are using out there. You do what is called the solution discovery. What are the tools? When you validate the business needs, you want to then go out, understand what are the tools available out there? What are the key capabilities? What are the functionality of the tools that can meet these business needs? Then you go on to do your option analysis, make your recommendation at that point. And also at this point, you begin to plan for your organizational change management. Very important. You are learning, you need to begin to educate the business because everybody we've been used to the traditional on-prem implementation. So at this point, you begin to plan how to change the orientation of your team. Because remember, the approach is to pack your bag and move into the new apartment. So you need to begin to change their mind. Now we're not going to sit down to build it to fit our king size bed, to fit our jacuzzi and all of that. We just need to pack our bags, the few essential things we need to run and continue to deliver value to our customers and move into the luxury apartment. So the next phase would then be once you have validated the business needs, you have documented high-level requirements, you understand the key features of the tool, the key capabilities of tools in the market that can deliver the business value. You then go to select your vendors. You'd have shortlisted some vendors through the first phase of work. You then go into the vendor selection process. Now you can develop an RFP, conduct demos, vendor workshop, evaluate proposal, begin to select a product, and then begin to negotiate contracts. Kindly note that I would also mention some things the BA would not necessarily be responsible for, but just to create that awareness that some of these things would happen. For example, during this phase, the BA or the project manager will work very closely with the procurement team or whoever is in charge of procurement. At this point, you can then begin to also conduct your OCM orientation. Remember, I said in the first phase, you should begin to plan for OCM. It is never too early to engage your stakeholders. In fact, involve them in the selection process, involve them in creating your RFP, in the demo, the vendor workshop, involve them in evaluating the proposal. That is how you are building knowledge upon knowledge for them so that they really understand the vision and where the organization is going into. And this falls under all your OCM activities. So the next phase is to prepare for implementation. You want to put together your team and make sure your implementation team consists of key business teams. Don't feel because it's the business, it's just, there's no much effort needed. It's going to be 3 to 6 months. Let the BA just be involved. No, involve your business stakeholders. Thank you, Elizabeth. Oh my goodness, I'm terrible with abbreviation. OCM means organizational change management. And I have a slide that will talk more about it too down the line. Thank you thanks for that catch. So you want to involve them, make sure you have a team with everybody represented. Of course, you don't want to bring the whole organization as part of your project, but make sure the key business areas are involved. Conduct your user workshops, optimize your processes. At this point, you now know the solution you are using. You can then begin to try to align your business processes to the tool, not the other way around. So you have your business processes, begin to explore how can we change the way we do things to align with the tool, the way the tool works. Now it involves a whole lot of facilitation of discussion. You would experience pushbacks from the business for sure. They are used to doing things a certain way. It would take some level of energy to move them to change their ways of working. The next phase would all be then to implement the solution, which the software vendor will be heavily involved at this time. Again, if you've not done a SaaS deployment before, it's not really advisable to want to do it on your own. You might need some help. So most organizations would facilitate the support of vendors to help them install, to help them configure. So basically what the vendor does is more of installation, configuration more like, and then customize as little as possible. And like I said, it could just be you are trying to align to the branding guideline, they are building integration. It might just be a tool that takes care of one part of the business. You want to also integrate it to the larger technology landscape of the organization. You are migrating data, you are testing, you are training your end user, the IT staffs at this phase of the solution. And then the next phase is the solution moves into operation. Before the solution even moves into operation, during implementation or sometime before, you are planning for this part as the BA. You are setting up the production team for success. I've worked in organizations where I'm just only involved in the project part of in delivering the solution. We have another team responsible for managing the solution once it's in production. But as a BA, you can set them up for success. Education is important. Coming up with collaborating with them to design a support model that would help them manage that too. Because you know the difference here now is that this tool is managed largely end-to-end by the vendor. So how do you design a support model that makes sure the business is equipped to do what they can do, and there is an escalation or there is SLAs in place to put in tickets to the vendor when the team cannot handle those issues? And what is the turnaround time? In fact, when you are developing your support model, and I speak from experience, you need to look at the contracts. Look at the contract to look what are the SLAs, what are the timelines, what are the performance metrics that have been agreed. All these will fit into your support model for that too. So you need to work together with the business to make sure this is in place prior to implementation. And I'll share something that happened, I learned recently. So we were having a lessons learned session in my organization. And part of one lessons learned that came up was the fact that make sure you have the support model in place, especially when you are doing an agile deployment. So they kind of, they adopted an agile approach to their deployment. And the first, and you know, typically, and this is why we need to reimagine and rethink our approach. Typically in a traditional implementation, your support model comes at the end after testing, after you've built the entire solution. That is when you bring in, you work on your support model just before go live. However, the team forgot that even though this is agile, we are delivering a minimum viable product to production. And so we need to have support model in place. But of course, we are all learning and getting better. They forgot about the support model and it was a problem. That solution went into production. People did not know who was responsible for what in supporting that tool. So it's something we need to pay attention to, and which I just learned this week. So we keep learning and we keep adapting and we keep getting better as we navigate this constantly changing world. Now, this I had to get this online to kind of show you that even organizations, global organizations, are adapting their deployment processes to fit that approach I just shared with you. So you see a ServiceNow implementation approach. They engage with the customer to understand their needs. They move on to define the requirements. Now the customer understands the tool. They plan they have their backlog. Is an agile approach. They then configure the tools under the create phase, transition it to go live, and then they close out the project. I also have another one here from SAP. They first, they prepare, they explore. Under exploration, they are doing a solution walkthrough, showing the client how the solution will work. And then there's a feed gap analysis. They go on to build, they use data templates to collect data and, you know, configure the tool. There's user training, then there's a deployment, and there's go live. I want to ask a quick question before we continue. For those of you, if I have people that have worked in traditional software development and now have experienced SaaS implementation, what tools have you used more in the SaaS implementation and that probably you didn't use so much when you were doing the trial? What techniques, what are the new techniques you see yourself using more in this SaaS space? And this is for, I know some people are just starting their careers in business analysis and have only experienced the SaaS implementation. Okay, Jira, yeah, Elizabeth, Jira is a tool. Yeah, exactly. So you use Jiras to build your backlog, you know, manage your user stories and all of that, and your delivery, which is, yes, I agree with you. We didn't used to use Jira back in the days. Lucy, Chad, and Miro. Thank you very much. And typically, what would you use this Lucy, Chad, and Miro? Yeah, you're talking about tools. I also want to hear about techniques. Thank you, Mohammed. I see Monday.com, yeah, similar to Scrum. Thank you very much, which helps you break down your deliveries. Yeah. For me, I have used, I would say, the fit gap analysis technique more because I'm trying to compare the optimize or the improved process of the organization against the tool and to identify where the gaps are so that I can then begin to have conversation with the business, make some negotiation. How do we change here where the tool and our processes do not align? How do we change? How do we bend to align to the SaaS tool? I've also had to do lots of walkthrough because you need to engage people, walk them through the solution to understand and begin to reimagine how their processes can align with the process of built into those tools. Let's move quickly, faster. So let's talk about some best practices and recommendations from my experience. And please, as I go along, kindly share your recommendation, your best practices that you've learned in the course of implementing a SaaS application. I really love to learn and add to my list. So the first is to perform a solution discovery. I know I talked about this when I walked us through those processes. Most times when you want to buy a SaaS tool, you really don't know exactly, you don't have a tool in mind. And as BAs, we are taught to always do option analysis. An option could be do nothing. So you want to go into you want to validate the business need, define the business objective, go into the market, do a discovery, understand what are the leading tools in that space, what are the key capabilities, what can they do, what are their requirements around data privacy, security, all those terms. You want to know about all of that before you make your recommendation. You conduct market research. Like I said, you're also paying attention when you are doing your solution discovery. You can also compare an on-prem and a SaaS option. Don't just say because we are going on, we want a SaaS tool. Sometimes the on-prem might take a little more time, but it might be cheaper in the long run. SaaS, some people think because it's subscription or pay as you go, they think it's cheap, not necessarily. If you do a cost-benefit analysis comparison with an on-prem session, on-prem tool, you might see that about 10 years down the line, the costs are aligning. Even 5 to 10 years, you see the cost. Initially, you see this SaaS cost low, but if you compound it over time, it almost aligns with the on-prem. You also want to pay attention to the non-functional requirement. How scalable is this tool? The bandwidth, the hosting, the performance. What is the secure data security? We know, of course, one of the risks or the problem with SaaS deployment is that, that your data is not as secured as you would have it with an on-prem deployment. You want to understand their disaster discovery procedure. Do they have system documentation to support you when you run into issue? What's their customer support model like? What's exit strategies? Because most SaaS will typically have this lock-in, or they want to get you to sign in for a 3 to 5 years contract from year one, and there's really no way out. If you realize that the software sucks some months down the line, you are stuck with them. So you want to understand, you are planning for your exit strategy right from the very beginning. The next one is the selection of the solution. Now, the BA would not, of course, work independently at this point. You want to collaborate with the procurement team, or the team that is responsible for procuring your tool. You want to be conducting vendor demos to evaluate, to understand the tools. You want to show them how, you want the vendors to show you how their tool will solve the problems of the organization. I'm currently working on an RFP, developing an RFP for a SaaS tool we are about buying. And part of how I categorized my requirement was first to write the general business requirement. Then I met with the business to understand their challenging business scenarios. Basically, what are your pain points using this current tool and this process? How can we improve on it? And all of that I included in my requirements document for the RFP. And my expectation during the demo is that the vendor will be showing us, by us, I mean myself and the business team, showing us how their tool will meet with those challenging business scenarios we are currently experiencing. And also show us how, of course, the tool would meet with those other basic requirements and non-functional requirements. Remember, you need to have your stakeholders on board early. Let them be involved at this point. Don't do vendor selection, evaluation without the key stakeholders, because this period is also an education period for them. You want to verify the performance of the application. You want to select the solution that is the best fit for your business processes. And of course, they also have the best practices embedded. You want to ensure that the data models will fulfill the requirements of the organization. And of course, at this point, you're assembling your implementation team. You want to make sure you have a balanced team with all the appropriate skills and experience that you require. So the next phase I will talk about is configuration and testing. And basically, I'm only telling you what I've learned from experience and from research, the best practices that you can adopt in different phases of the project. Now, during configuration, you have defined your business processes along the solution's capability. Adapting an agile approach is also good so that you fail quick and you also learn, right? And most vendors I've seen, most of them are applying or using the agile deployment for their SaaS deployment. You also want to, You also want to, of course, now you are doing configuration and testing. You don't expect the vendor to do the testing for you. You need to make sure that your QA team are doing all the technical testing, the regression testing, and all of that. And then you as a BA supporting the business team, you are also doing your user acceptance testing at this point. When you move to the next phase of transition to operation, you are preparing the business, you are setting the business up for success. Remember, OCM continues all through this phase. I'm sorry about this. So it's just an alarm telling me to grab my son from the bus stop. Thank you. Sorry about that pause. So I was talking about transition to operation. You want to, at this point, you want to make sure you have your support model documented, you socialize with your stakeholders, you agree communication channels with your vendors so that if there are issues, they are quickly handled and it does not stall business operation. You establish everybody in the organization, the business team, the technical team, they know what their responsibilities are in supporting this new tool. You want to clearly define that, no ambiguity. The next phase is operations. So during operations, you want to continue So the cool thing with SaaS is that it's not a once and for all deployment. Once you deploy a SaaS tool, that is not the end. Most SaaS tools, usually they have a roadmap. They want to continually improve on their products. So you want to also plan for benefit realization. You want to maximize the tool. You want to plan to enjoy the new features that would be introduced by the vendor as you go down the line. So all of that, you need to plan for all of that during your operation. So let's look at OCM very closely because it's a big part, it's a very critical success factor in a SaaS deployment. So OCM, Elizabeth asked earlier, is the organizational change management, basically the people side of change. We know most times when we talk about applications, in fact, all the while I've been talking about the technical or the product side of the change, but we can't ignore people because without the people, the product is as good as useless. It will just sit on the shelf. So you need people to drive the use of that product, to adopt that product, to be able to realize the business value. So please, one skill I would recommend every BA should have today is change management. You should understand the principles of change management and know when to begin to apply it in your project. It's very important for a SaaS implementation because it's still all about the reimagining, the rethinking, the new mindset. You need to do a lot of education, educate yourself first, like I said in the beginning, and then you are equipped to be able to manage and educate your team. So I have, for me, I recommended a 4-step approach. The first is for you to identify every impacted stakeholder. Very important, nobody should be left out. Educate them. From the very beginning, let them understand that this is different from what we used to do before. Before now, we build from scratch, but now we pack our bags with all the essentials and we move into the service department. You need to educate them. You need to collaborate with them, engage them very early, involve them during your vendor selection, your selection of your tool. It's never too early to involve them, and communicate as much as possible. Communicate often. If there is a delay, maybe you have put out your RFP, you are waiting for responses, communicate, let them know where you are, what's happening, what is expected of them. Very, very important. I need to run faster now. So I'll quickly talk about risk we should be able to identify and monitor closely in a SaaS implementation. So I'll talk about the risk category and the suggested mitigation plan. So during procurement, that is when you are sourcing, discovering your tool, and you are trying to buy. A lot of things can go wrong. The things you need to pay attention to, there are so many things, but I'm only summarizing it. You need to review the contract critically, analyze. You bring in your attention to details, review it for hidden costs and barriers to exit. You don't want to lock in the organization unduly to a contract. Something is very uncertain. We're not used to it. We don't know what to expect down the line. Negotiate a robust performance terms. Have an exit strategy right from day one. If you need to exit, if you need to stop using that tool, what plan do you have in place? Also, look at volume discounting. If you anticipate a growth some months down the line because you see where the business is going, how can you include that into the contract? Also conduct an RFI and RFP. Make it competitive so that you get the best out of the process. Sometimes as BA, we might not be responsible for making this decision, but of course we can suggest, we can influence, we can coach our leaders, not coach them to understand these best practices. OCM. Okay, the next part is OCM, and I'll say engage and educate very early. It's never too early. You educate, you need to customize your education. You need to educate the decision makers on the SaaS business model, how they are going to be paying and what it means for their budget. You need to educate the production, the support team, what to expect. They will have frequent updates, probably quarterly, twice in a year. How do they plan for all of that? You need to educate the business team. Oh, we have to adopt a user-assist mindset. We are not going to be customizing. We are moving away from all the customization, and we need to adopt more of a user-centered mindset. So you need to educate and coach your different stakeholder groups. Communicate effectively what the potential risk and cost are. We know we're all learning and growing together in this space. During your implementation, pay attention to eliminate products that do not meet baseline security, privacy, and risk requirements. You need to have requirements for those areas, very important. You need to validate and prioritize business needs. This will also help you in planning your agile delivery. Simplify complex processes, keep it simple. Avoid unique and over customization. Let's look at, I know I'm rushing too fast because I know we are beyond time and I want to also have time to answer the question. During post-implementation, a lot of things can also go wrong. You want to design a robust support model. I talked about this earlier. And of course, do this in collaboration with your stakeholders. You as the BA might not be involved in that process. You don't want it to seem like it's your thing, is a we thing. Also, have a benefit realization plan. Adopt a product management mindset. You will continually improve on using this tool. What are the new features? How can you use it to benefit the business? Have a SaaS governance model. This is basically a document that says policies around the usage of SaaS, who is responsible for what the processes, because it's new. You want to be able, Elizabeth, thank you very much. RFI, RFP, request for information, request for proposal. Thank you very much. So bringing it all together, I would summarize all what I've been talking about in the past 20 slides in 3. First, it requires a mindset change. I don't want to use, I know there's this buzzword, the business analysis mindset, there's the agile mindset, there's the product management mindset, there's the digital mindset. But basically, we need to change our mindset. We need to rethink the way we work. We need to reimagine our processes. And the focus should be on value. We need to be curious, ask questions, challenge the status quo, look out for alternatives, simplify complex processes, keep it simple, focus on customer experience. We need to collaborate and communicate even more effectively. Learn to use all the best collaboration tools that are online, especially now that we are working remotely. We need to be open to change and flexible, very important. The next, I can never overemphasize the benefit of OCM. Identify, educate, collaborate, and communicate. Very important. There will be need for a detailed change impact assessment. What are the things changing? Because the business is aligning to the tool. What are the things that are changing? You need to coach at all levels. Put your stakeholders in buckets, target them with the right materials they need. You need to manage resistance, expect resistance. You need to conduct a thorough skills and knowledge gap analysis and plan your training to drive adoption of the new tool. Very, very important. And the last one here is continuous improvement. You don't just support, you don't deploy the tool and that is the end of it. Like I said, adopt a product management mindset. You will continue. You've only deployed a minimum viable product. You need to continue to collect feedback from your customers and put it into, create it as ticket for the vendors. Look at the roadmap, the vendor roadmap, align it to the business need. Sometimes the business might not even know what to do with some of the new features that are being released by the vendor. You can have a framework in place to educate them to on these new features and how it can benefit their business process. I would stop here for today, and maybe I'll have an opportunity to come some other time and maybe take one piece and delve in. There's so much to talk about. There's so much. I will just rest my case here today. And about me, like Tim introduced me earlier, I am all things business transformation. I've done this for over 13 years of my life. I've served in different capacity, BA, PM, change management, and now I'm looking more into the product management space. I'm an equiper. I train people. I help them start careers in business analysis, project management. I've done curriculum development for college. I actively volunteer with the IIBA. I'm also a mother in the midst of all of this. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to connect. Thank you very much. Thank you, IIBA South Africa, for this opportunity to share my knowledge and also learn from everyone today.
Thank you, Gay. That was brilliant. That was a beautiful and very informative presentation. It's much appreciated. We have about 8 questions here, and about 7. Let's see if we can go through them one by one, if you don't mind, okay?
Sure.
The first one is Zamani, and the question is, how does a business analyst upskill their software knowledge to stay relevant in the job market?
So for me, there are lots of training, and the IIBA is doing well. I see the chapter has also helped us today to learn something new. I also go out of my way, look out for training resources online. There's Udemy, there's YouTube. There are lots of avenues to learn. I'm also pleased if you know of other places to also learn of new technology tools. But Zamani, I would also tell you, don't be too focused on learning a particular technology tool. If you understand the business principle or the business process, right? Most time it would help you understand how those tools work, because there's so many tools in the market. How many of them do you really want to learn? But of course, when you are supporting the organization to deploy a tool, you need to spend time as part of the BA, your research period, to understand that tool and to be able to support them effectively. But on LinkedIn, I've gotten lots of resources people have shared on LinkedIn. So it depends on you. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Next question is from Sipumilele. I'm a student of business analysis. Is it necessary for me to learn Microsoft Azure? Can I learn Microsoft Azure without having any programming skill in order to be able to deploy? I think the question should be in order to be able to deploy software as a service applications.
Okay, thank you for that question. And I will speak, and anything I say here is just my opinion, right? It's not gospel. I don't understand the intricacies of Microsoft Azure, but I've implemented a couple of software applications. I allow my technical analysts to worry about all of that. But it doesn't hurt to learn, right? But like I said, if you have the capacity to learn, no knowledge is lost. Focus to understand what is needed for your job part-time. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, okay, thank you so much. Another question, you should elaborate more on the customization in software as a service world.
Okay, yeah, sometimes it's recommended you minimize or you avoid customization. Even in the traditional implementation, it is highly recommended, because over time you realize that organizations that have spent time customizing their tool, it's more expensive to upgrade. It's expensive to upgrade. They spend more time because sometimes they need to mask their upgrades or take out their customization upgrade and bring it back, and it can be risky. And of course, in the software, in the software as a service world, is highly recommended you do not customize. However, there is still room for customization. Like I said, you could want to align the look and feel to your brand guideline. You might want to customize some labels, maybe some things. It's allowed, but as much as possible, minimize customization. You might want to customize some reports too, to meet your operational needs. It's that some software applications make allowance for that. Like in the RFP I talked about that I put out recently, I asked, one of the questions we asked the vendors, what are your allowances? What can we really do? What can we tinker around with the tool? So basically that gives us some allowance to make some little changes, but as much as possible, encourage the team to change their mind to use assist. Let them use the tool assist, not try to customize the tool.
To the next one from Oluwaseun. To be fit for the future, would you advise to learn about how to optimize our organization's business practices, conduct gap analysis, and ensure that the software as a service adopted is fit for our organization?
Very, very important. Yes. Yes, I would highly recommend that. How understanding processes, how to improve processes, because you need to, if you don't know how to do a fit gap analysis, is a critical tool you need to effectively support a SaaS, because that's where you are paying attention to. You're not spending time to write endless requirements. You are spending time to understand the business processes, how it aligns with the tool. Are there gaps? What are the gaps? So those are areas you should hone your skills even more.
All right, moving on to the next by Mohammed. Solutions in software as a service have been already built, but sometimes we have requirements that are not well covered by the off-the-shelf software. How can gap analysis best be conducted to make sure we spend adequate time and effort?
Okay, so most times you would realize that your business processes does not align with what has been built in the solution. You conduct your gap analysis, identify what are the gaps. And when you identify those gaps, you can begin to have conversation with the business team to explain to them how the tool works. And you'll be surprised that they are willing to, oh, really, we are willing to make that change to adapt to the tool. And that reduces your gap, right? That brings an alignment. And sometimes, oh, they might insist. And then when you also evaluate what the business is asking, there is real business value. What you can also do is to raise a ticket, because these vendors are calling for more. They want to improve their processes. They want to meet and exceed customer expectation. You can put in a ticket. You have most SaaS application would have what is called a roadmap. They tell you what they are building next, what they intend to build in the next couple of months down the line. You put in a ticket and you have different customers voting for that ticket. So those are ways you conduct your gap analysis, but it doesn't mean that the software must come with it the first deployment. It can come as future capabilities that the system would have. So you need to educate the stakeholders, try to align to this tool if they can. Otherwise, it might just be something that will remain in the backlog until the system can achieve that feature that they need.
All right, I think finally from Kululeko, how can this requirement be addressed as retrofitting to SaaS solution into already existing business processes?
So can you repeat that question?
How can these requirements be addressed as retrofitting to this SaaS, that software as a service solution, into already existing business processes?
Can be challenging. It's not very clear.
Yeah.
How can these requirements be addressed as retrofitting? I think I'm not sure. So
I think,
let me attempt. Okay, go ahead, Tim.
I think the question is just talking about fitting software as a service solution into existing business process. I think that's the summary of that question.
So that is not the approach, right? Remember, that is the approach in the traditional world. We are trying to fit the solution to our business processes. But right now, we need to rethink, we need to reimagine it, right? We are trying to now fit our business processes into the SaaS solution. So remember the luxury apartment I talked about, that is our SaaS solution. And our business processes basically are the essentials we need in our bag. We pack them and just move into the luxury apartment. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, you did. Thank you so much, Oge. Thank you so much for your
You're
time.
welcome.
It's been a pleasure to have you here with us. And I'm sure next time we send our invitation to you, you will gladly accept. And I want to use this opportunity to thank everyone that has joined us today. It's been a pleasure having you here. And do have a lovely evening. And okay, I guess it's morning over there for you. Have a lovely one, wonderful day. It's afternoon. Okay, have a lovely afternoon. Take care, everyone, and see you next time.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Yeah.